السلام عليكم. نلتقي مجددا أعزائي الطلبة، طلبة المرحلة الثالثة في قسم الترجمة، في محاضرة جديدة من محاضرات مادة النحو المقارن. In this lecture, we are going to continue our discussion of the topic types of sentences. As you remember, in our previous lecture, we have started discussing the types of sentences, and we have already discussed the first major type of English sentences, which is the yes-no questions. And today we are going to continue our discussion of the major types in addition to the discussion of the two minor types of sentences. So today is going to be a continuation of our discussion of types of sentences. So this will be part 2 of the topic types of sentences. So the following topics will be discussed in this lecture. First of all, we are going to discuss the remaining two major types of questions, which are WH questions and alternative questions. Then we will move to the discussion of the two minor types of questions, which are exclamatory questions and rhetorical questions. WH questions, this is the second type of the major types of questions in English, and as you already know, it has been so called because this type of questions usually starts with a WH word, like who, which, whose, why, how, when, where, or what. That's why they have been called WH questions. Regarding WH questions, this type of question seeks specific information from the addressee. So, unlike yes-no questions, which we have already said that they don't require specific information from the addressee, yes-no questions are used just to get some short answer, either by having a positive answer by using yes, or by having a negative answer through the response no. This is not the case with WH questions, because WH questions they need some specific information from the addressee. إذا تختلف WH questions عن yes no questions بأنها تتطلب ممن يطرح عليه السؤال أن يعطي إجابة محددة عن الشيء الذي يتم طرح السؤال عنه. The second difference is that WH questions have a falling intonation. So again, regarding the yes-no questions, we have already said that they have a rising intonation. This is not the case with WH questions, because WH questions usually start with ordinary tone or ordinary intonation. Then it will have some falling intonation. So this is the second difference between yes-no questions and WH questions. The third feature which characterizes WH questions is that they begin with one of the interrogative words, as we have already mentioned. These interrogative words are called WH words. They include words like where, when, who, what, which, whose, why, and how. As we have already said, that WH questions require a specific information as an answer. For example, what do you watch on TV? We have to give some specific answer by saying, for example, a film. Or if the WH question is, where do they live? Again, the answer should be some specific information regarding the place where they live. For example, in London. Why do you cry? Again, the answer should be some specific information regarding the reason for your crying. For example, because I am sad. When does your dad arrive? Again, here it is required to give some specific information regarding the time of the arrival of your father. For example, at 9:30. What time does she finish her lesson? Again, here the specific information required is about the time of finishing her lesson. For example, at 14 o'clock. So, as you have seen here, WH questions ask for some specific information. How do we make WH questions؟ ما هي القاعدة التي من خلالها أتمكن من تكوين ما يسمى ب WH question؟ First of all, we have to use a question word or a WH word like what, when, where, etc. Then we have to use an auxiliary verb, for example, do, does, did, or any other auxiliary verb. Then the auxiliary verb should be followed by the subject, and the subject should be followed by the main verb of the sentence, and if there are any other elements in the sentence, these elements should follow the main verb. For example, what does your father do? So here we have a WH question which is made up of a WH word or a question word, which is what. Then it is followed by the auxiliary verb does, and it is followed by the subject, your father, and the subject is followed by the main verb, which is the verb do, and of course there should be the appropriate punctuation mark, which is a question mark, since we have a question. لابد أن نضع علامة التنقيط أو الترقيم المناسبة لكل نوع من أنواع الجمل. فما دام لدينا هنا سؤال فينبغي أن نختار علامة السؤال لنضعها في نهاية هذه الجملة لتدل على أنها سؤال وليست جملة خبرية أو جملة تعجبية أو جملة أمرية. If the WH element asks about the subject of the statement, no auxiliary inversion is required. إذن في حال كان السؤال عن فاعل الجملة، ففي هذه الحالة لا نحتاج إلى تطبيق قاعدة عكس أو قلب الفعل المساعد مع الفاعل التي نحتاجها دائما من أجل أن نخلق سؤال. فإذا كان السؤال عن الفاعل لا حاجة إلى تطبيق هذه القاعدة التي نطلق عليها اسم auxiliary subject inversion rule. For example, John can type. This is a statement, and if we want to make a question asking about the person who did the job, which is typing, so we have to use the appropriate WH word, which is who, because we are asking about the subject. So the WH question will be like this: who can type? So instead of the subject, which we are asking about, we put the question word who. Then it is followed by the ordinary order of the sentence. So John can type. Instead of John, we put who, and it becomes a WH question asking about the subject, who can type, and then we put the question mark. But if the WH element asks about the predicate, there must be auxiliary subject inversion. إذا إن كان السؤال بخصوص أي عنصر آخر من عناصر الجملة ما عدا الفاعل، في هذه الحالة لابد من تطبيق قاعدة auxiliary subject inversion rule. For example, she is sewing. And if we want to ask about the thing that she is doing, so we have to use the question word what. So the WH question will be like this: what is she doing? Again, we have used the WH question word what, followed by the auxiliary verb is, followed by the subject she, and followed by the thing that we are asking about, which is what is she doing. So, and of course we have to put a question mark at the end. So here we have a WH question. If the statement has no auxiliary, the auxiliary do is introduced. Again, if we have a statement in which there is no auxiliary verb. We have only the main verb. So in this case we can make use of the do support rule. نستعين بقاعدة do support rule اللي من خلالها أستعين بالverb do كأن يكون do or did or does كفعل مساعد من أجل أن أكون WH question. For example, he bought a house. Here, as you see, we have only the main verb, bought. We don't have an auxiliary verb. So in this case, we have to make use of the do support rule. And the question will be, what did he buy? So we have used the question word what, followed by the auxiliary verb did, and we chose did because the main verb bought is in the past. Then it is followed by the subject he, and followed by the base form of the verb buy, and of course there should be a question mark at the end of the question. As you see here in this table, all the WH words are summarized, and each with its function or its meaning. For example, what, it is used to ask for information about something. إذا تستخدم للسؤال عن شيء معين. When, it is used to ask about the time that something happened or will happen. تستخدم للسؤال عن زمن حدوث شيء، وقد يكون حدوث هذا الشيء حدث في الماضي أو قد يحدث في المستقبل. Where, it is used to ask questions about a place or position. تستخدم للسؤال عن مكان أو موقع. Which, it is used to ask for information about one of a limited number of things. تستخدم للسؤال عن شيء من خلال عدد محدد من الأشياء. Who, it is used to ask about someone's identity. للسؤال عن الفاعل العاقل في الجملة. Whom, it is used to ask about the object or person in this sentence. تستخدم للسؤال عن المفعول به العاقل أيضا. Whose, it is used to ask about position. للسؤال عن التملك. Why, it is used to ask for reason. للسؤال عن السبب. أما how, it is used to ask about the way in which something is done. تستخدم للسؤال عن الكيفية أو الآلية التي تحدث من خلالها شيء أو يتحقق من خلالها شيء معين. Subject questions. We have two types of WH questions asking about the subject. لدينا نوع من أنواع WH question للسؤال عن الفاعل. First of all, if the subject is animate, إذا كان الفاعل حي أو عاقل, we use the WH question who. For example, John loves me, and if we want to ask about the subject, we use who, and we say who loves you. My parents saw me. Again, if we want to ask about the subject, we can say who saw you. Nobody is waiting for me. Again, we have nobody is the subject, and if we want to ask about this subject, we can say who is waiting for you. As for the subject, if it is something inanimate, يعني شيء غير حي, for example, a lorry or the storm, in this case we don't use the WH word who, but rather we use the WH word what. For example, a lorry is blocking the road. So the WH question for this statement will be what is blocking the road? And the storm caused the accident. Again, we have inanimate subject, so the WH question for this statement will be what caused the accident? Again, in the last example, your sister ate your apple. Here again, we have the subject which is animate. So the WH question will be who ate my apple? Now, regarding the WH word whom, it is an object pronoun. تستخدم للسؤال عن المفعول به. It is just like any other object pronoun like him, her, or us. We use whom to ask which person receives an action. إذا نستخدم whom للسؤال عن الشخص الذي استلم شيء ما أو وقع عليه أثر فعل ما. For example, whom are you going to invite? For example, the original sentence is I am going to invite Nada, for example. So Nada will be the object in the statement. If we want to ask about the object, we use the WH word whom. In the second example, whom did he blame for the accident? Again, here we are asking about the object. For example, we can say he blamed his father for the accident. So his father will be the object. Whom did he hire to do the job? Again, we used whom to ask about the object. For example, he hired Ahmed to do the job. So Ahmed will be the direct object. If we want to ask about this object, we can use the WH word whom. Regarding the WH word whose, it is used as a possessive pronoun or a WH word used to ask about possession للسؤال عن التملك أو عن عائدية شيء ما. So it is a possessive pronoun just like his, her, or our. We use whose to find out which person something belongs to. إذا نستخدم whose للسؤال عن عائدية شيء ما، لمن يعود هذا الشيء أو لمن تعود ملكية هذا الشيء. For example, whose camera is this? We can say this camera is mine. So if we want to ask about the position of this camera, we can use the WH word whose. Or whose dog is barking outside? For example, Ahmed's dog is barking outside. Whose cell phone keeps ringing? We can say my cell phone keeps ringing. So if we want to ask about the position العائدية أو الملكية, we can ask by using the WH word whose. There is some difference between the usage of the two WH words which and what. Both of them are used to ask about something, okay? But there is some important difference between the two. For example, what actor do you like best? This is a question which has unlimited number of answers. يعني يكون الجواب عادة باستخدام what غير محدد. But if you said which color do you want, red or green? Here you have a limited number of answers. You are obliged to choose one of the options which are raised in the question. So what is used for an unlimited number of choices, while which is used for a limited number of choices? For example, what is your name? What refers to an open set and the speaker has no chance of guessing any name. إذن الهو what here it is used يعني تستخدم لعدد غير محدد من الخيارات أو الإجابات. حين يطرح السؤال what is your name, من يطرح عليه السؤال أو من يطرح السؤال هنا ليس لديه توقعات عن الاسم أو لا يوجد في تفكيره أسماء معينة، أوكي؟ لكن حين يكون السؤال which is your name, which refers to a close set and the speaker may have a few names in mind or on the list. حين يطرح نفس السؤال ولكن باستخدام which بدلا من what، في هذه الحالة من يطرح السؤال هنا لديه بعض التوقعات عن الاسم، أو يعني أما أن يكون يفكر في هذه التوقعات أو ربما تكون لديه قائمة تضم عددا محددا من الأسماء ويطلب منك أن تختار اسمك من بين الأسماء الموجودة من ضمن القائمة، فحيكون في هذه الحالة الجواب محدد نوعا ما، لكن باستخدام what سيكون الجواب غير محدد. It is unlimited. So this is the difference between using what and which to ask about something. As you see here, there are some examples regarding the use of WH words. Who is flying the kite? So as we said, who is used to ask about the subject and it is about persons. تستخدم للسؤال عن الفاعل العاقل. Where does Daniela live? Where it is used to ask about the place. How often do you visit your grandfather? How often? It is used to ask about frequency. Which dress should I wear for the party? So, as we have already mentioned, if we use the WH word which, this means that we have a limited number of choices. How much sugar should I put in your coffee? So we have used how much to ask about the quantity or the amount of something. Why are you crying? Here we have used why to ask about the reason. How long do you get a shower? How long it is used to ask about the duration. المدة الزمنية التي تستغرقها يعني تستغرقها فعل شيء معين أو القيام بنشاط معين. How questions are used to find out information about a quantity or quality. تستخدم how للسؤال أو لطلب معلومات، وهذه المعلومات تخص أما الكمية أو النوعية. How many bagels are in a dozen? As you know, bagels is a type of bread. So how many is used to ask about the quantity للسؤال عن الكمية. How was the cake that Susan made? Here the question is about the quality. السؤال عن نوعية الكيك التي صنعتها Susan. How are you feeling today? Again, here it is used to ask about your health or your well-being. As you can see here in this diagram or table, many examples of the WH word how, because as you can see here, how it is used to ask about so many things. For example, it is used to ask about the distance. How far is your house from here? Or it is used to ask about age. How old is your grandfather? It is used to ask about the quantity, and this quantity is countable, معدودة. How many people are there? Or it is used to ask about the frequency, عدد مرات تكرار الأشياء. How often do you dance? How long للسؤال عن مدة زمنية, period of time. How long does it take you to go to work? How much أيضا it is used to ask about the quantity, but here it is uncountable nouns. الكمية تكون غير معدودة. For example, how much money do you want? How tall? It is used to ask about the highness for people. How tall are you? Or how high? Also it is used to ask about highness, but regarding buildings or mountains, etc. For example, how high is the Mount Everest? How deep? It is used to ask about the depth of something. How deep is the ocean, or how deep is the sea? How fast? It is used to ask about the fastness of something. للسؤال عن السرعة. How big للسؤال عن الحجم, size. How big was a dinosaur, for example. And how heavy? It is used to ask about the weight of something. للسؤال عن وزن شيء ما. For example, how heavy is the box? إذا كما تلاحظون how questions are so many different. There are so many various things that we can ask about by using the WH word how. Besides obtaining information, questions perform other illocutionary acts such as request or suggestion. إذن علاوة على أنه الأسئلة تقدم لنا معلومات محددة عن الشيء الذي نريد أن نسأل عنه، قد تستخدم الجمل الاستفهامية أحيانا كي تؤدي وظيفة تواصلية أخرى. هذه الوظيفة التواصلية الأخرى كان تكون طلب شيء معين a request أو تقديم مقترحات suggestions. فإذا ممكن أن نستخدم yes no question. Can you pass me the salt? كما تلاحظون this is a yes no question, but it is not used to get a positive yes or a negative no answer. It is used to request something. إذا استخدمنا yes no question في هذه الحالة لطلب شيء ما، وهو أن يمرر الملح على سبيل المثال إلي. فإذا this is called a request, okay? But this request is not made in a direct way. I didn't say to someone, pass me the salt. No, I tried to make it more polite by using a yes/no question. Or a WH question can be used to make some suggestion. استخدم ال WH question لتقديم مقترح معين. For example, why don't you come earlier? Here I am suggesting something, or I am making a suggestion by using a WH question. As you see here, we are using modal verbs to make some requests, and we are using yes/no questions to make these requests. إذا أستعين باليس نو questions وأستعين بالأفعال المساعدة الثانوية المودال verbs كي أتقدم بطلب معين. For example, would you please turn on the light? كما تلاحظون هنا it is a yes no question by using would as a modal verb, which is polite, and it is used to request something, which is turning on the light. Could you please bring me more coffee? Again, we have used a yes no question to make some request, which is bringing me more coffee, by using the by using the yes no question and by using the modal verb could, which is also polite. Or we can make our request less polite by using the modal verb will, and again we use a yes no question. For example, will you help me file these papers? So we are requesting some help from others. Or again, we can use the modal verb can, which is also less polite, and a yes no question to ask for some request. Can I borrow your book? Again, here we are requesting something, but we are not making this request in a direct way, but we are making it indirectly by using modal verbs and by using yes no questions. Regarding the suggestions or making suggestions, we can simply make a suggestion by saying, for example, let's watch a movie. This is a direct way of making suggestions. But we can make the same suggestion but in an indirect way by using WH questions. For example, instead of saying, let's watch a movie, we can say, why don't we watch a movie? Or, how about watching a movie? Or, what about watching a movie? So, in this case, we have used WH questions to make a certain suggestion. This is again an indirect way of making suggestions by using WH questions. Negative WH questions, they have the same role of affirmative WH questions, but in addition to that, we have to add the negative particle not. For example, why did he not come to the meeting? Or why didn't he come to the meeting? So we have two options. Either we put the negative particle not after the subject, or we put the negative particle not immediately after the auxiliary verb. So we can say either, why will he not study, by putting the particle not after the subject, or we can say, why won't he study? Here we have put the negative particle not immediately after the auxiliary verb. So we have two options for making a negative WH question. This is the rule of forming a negative question. First you have the question word, for example, why. Then you have the negative helping verb or negative auxiliary verb, الفعل المساعد المنفي. For example, didn't, doesn't, aren't, won't, isn't, haven't, can't, don't, weren't. Then you have the subject. for example, you, she, they, he, we, I, etc. And then you will have either the main verb of the sentence, or you have the other elements, or the remaining elements of the sentence. For example, if you have the verb help, work, studying, come, met, before, get a raise, like, pizza, or sometimes you have just an adverbial, for example, at school or on time. So this is the rule of making a negative WH question. Now we come to the third and the last major type of questions, which is called alternative questions أو الأسئلة التي تطرح خيارات. This type of a question provides the addressee with a limited number of alternatives. The addressee is in a way forced to choose between two or more alternatives. إذا في هذا النوع من الأسئلة من يطرح السؤال يضع عدة خيارات أو عدد محدد في الحقيقة من الخيارات، ومن يطرح عليه هذا السؤال يكون مجبرا إلى حد ما بأن يختار اثنين أو أحيانا أكثر من الخيارات المطروحة في السؤال. For example, would you like to have chocolate, vanilla, or strawberry? So here this is called an alternative question because it provides alternatives. Are you coming or not? Are you coming or aren't you? So you have to choose whether you will come or you will not come. Did John win the final or Mary? Again, some alternative has to be chosen, either John or Mary. One of them won the final, so you have to make up your mind and choose the right alternative. Again, as you see here, some other examples of alternative questions giving different alternatives about different things. Number one, did she meet him yesterday or last Sunday? So here there are two alternatives. Either she met him yesterday or she met him last Sunday. Number two, will Mike send this letter or a telegram tomorrow? So there are two options here, that either Mike will send this letter or Mike will send a telegram tomorrow. Number three, was Granny or Mom setting the table when the guests came? Here we have two options, either the Granny or the Mom was the one who set the table. Number four, do Americans celebrate Thanksgiving Day in November or December? Here we're asking about the month or the time when Americans celebrate Thanksgiving. Is it in November or in December? Number five, had all or a few of the documents been signed by 3 p.m.? Here we want to know whether all the documents or just a few of the documents have been signed by 3 p.m. Number six, are they playing baseball at the court or in the gym? Here we are asking about the place where baseball has been played by them. Either it is at the court or in the gym. Number seven, have you done the job already or not? Here you have to answer by using one of the two options, whether you have done the job or you haven't done the job. So this is what we mean by alternative questions. Now, after finishing our discussion of the three major types of questions, we move to the minor types of questions, and we have already mentioned that there are two minor types of questions, which are exclamatory questions and rhetorical questions. Exclamatory questions or a question, it is a minor type of questions, and it is similar to a yes-no question in its form, but has the meaning and force of an exclamation. So its function is like an exclamation. إذن السؤال التعجبي في حقيقة الأمر في هيئته أو في شكله هو يشبه اليس نو question من حيث القاعدة التي تنطبق عليه، لكن وظيفة السؤال التعجبي هو أن يطرح تعجبا أو أن يبدي تعجبه من شيء معين، وتكون طريقة التعجب باستخدام صيغة السؤال. This is called an exclamatory question. For example, hasn't he grown? As you see here. كما نلاحظ هنا نفس قاعدة ال yes no question بأن نبدأ السؤال بالauxiliary verb اللي هو has، وهنا الجملة منفية فنستخدم أداة النفي not. Then it is followed by the subject he and followed by the rest of the sentence, and there should be a question mark at the end because this is a question. Isn't she a big girl? Again, this is an example of an exclamatory question. Wasn't it an amazing party? Again, this is an example of an exclamatory question by using the auxiliary verb was, followed by the negative particle not, followed by the subject it, and followed by the rest of the sentence, and of course there should be a question mark at the end of the sentence. The second minor type is called rhetorical questions, الأسئلة البلاغية. This minor type of a question carries a strong assertion and seeks no response from the addressee. إذن هذا النوع الثانوي من أنواع الجمل الاستفهامية يحمل تأكيدا قويا جدا ولا يحتاج إلى جواب ممن يطرح عليه السؤال. يعني حين تستخدم سؤالا بلاغيا أنت لا تنتظر الإجابة على هذا السؤال، لأن أصلا تكون أنت متأكد جدا مما تطرحه. For example, is that a reason for despair? معناها it is definitely not a reason for despair. يعني أنت متأكد جدا إنه there is no reason for despair. لكن حين تريد أن تطرح تأكيدك لهذه النقطة لا تطرحها بشكل مباشر من خلال استخدام جملة خبرية اعتيادية، لكن بطريقة غير مباشرة من خلال استخدام السؤال البلاغي كي يكون وقعها أكبر على المتلقي. For example, if you say, can anyone doubt the wisdom of this action? This means that surely no one doubt the wisdom of this action. If you say, for example, is no one going to defend me? This means that you are very sure that someone is going to defend you. إذا أنت متأكد جدا أن أحدهم سيهب للدفاع عنك، لكن أنت لم تقل هذا بشيء مباشر أو بشكل مباشر، إنما لجأت إلى استخدام السؤال البلاغي كي يكون وقع هذا وقع الجملة يكون أكبر على المتلقي. Now, if we say, for example, who knows? This means that nobody knows. If you say, what difference does it make? It means it makes no difference. Isn't the reason obvious? When you use this as a rhetorical question, this means that the reason is definitely, or the reason is very obvious. So, what is a rhetorical question? When a question is posed to make a point, not because you want an answer. إذن يستخدم السؤال البلاغي حين تريد أن تطرح نقطة معينة أو مسألة معينة وأنت واثق جدا من ما تطرحه ولست بحاجة إلى جواب عن هذا السؤال. Or the answer is obvious and it doesn't need stated. أو يكون الجواب عادة واضح جدا بحيث ليست هنالك حاجة لأن يعني يطرح الجواب أصلا. To create a stronger effect than stating what you mean directly. إذن نلجأ إلى استخدام السؤال البلاغي من أجل خلق تأثير أكبر بكثير جدا من التأثير الذي نطرحه بمجرد استخدامنا لجملة خبرية اعتيادية، لأن الجملة البلاغية أو السؤال البلاغي راح يكون ذا تأثير أكبر بكثير مما نريد أن نعبر عنه بطريقة مباشرة. لاحظوا هنا some other points regarding exclamatory questions and rhetorical questions. Exclamatory questions are exclamations asserting the belief of the speaker. إذن السؤال التعجبي هي عبارة عن تعجبات لنستخدمها للتأكيد على الشيء اللي احنا واثقين منه جدا. For example, isn't he smart؟ معناها he is very smart. اوكي، لكننا لم نلجأ إلى يعني الحديث عنه بشكل مباشر، وإنما لجأنا إلى استخدام ال exclamatory question. Or rhetorical questions are not intended to be answered، لا تحتاج إلى جواب، but instead serve to state the opinion of the speaker، لكنها تستخدم من أجل أن تبين وجهة نظر المتحدث. For example, have you heard the news about Ellen؟ This is an ordinary yes no question. هذا سؤال yes no question اعتيادي. لاحظوا الجواب اللي اجى على هذا النوع من السؤال لم يأتي كشورت answer اعتيادي by answering yes or no، وإنما أتى على صيغة rhetorical question. أتى الجواب على صيغة سؤال بلاغي. Who hasn't؟ معناها everyone has heard the news about Ellen. فإذا من أجل أن أخلق يعني تأثير أكبر من مجرد الجواب المباشر بأن أجيب ب yes or no، I want to create some stronger effect by using a rhetorical question. إذا استخدمت السؤال البلاغي من أجل أن أخلق تأثير أقوى بكثير جدا من مجرد الإجابة المباشرة البسيطة القصيرة. This is the reason behind using rhetorical questions. This is the end of our lecture for today. Thank you so much for your attention and for your attendance and for your good questions and for your good comments. And I hope you find the lecture interesting and it has so many useful information to you. And as usual, all your questions or your comments, all your suggestions are welcomed, and I would like to listen to you. And if you have any question, you can ask it here, or you can raise your questions in the classroom, and I will be glad to answer all your questions immediately. Thank you again. Hope to see you soon, inshallah.